So I suppose what I want to talk about now is why do we think we should SEO in-house? And you don't necessarily have to agree with that. Should be SEO in-house, should be SEO in agency. So I suppose, Jamie, what do you think the benefits from your experience? Because I suppose when you're at SEO, and I suppose now here we're saying, actually, you should consider in-house. I suppose, what's your view?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest benefits of having an in-house SEO team is the ability to own that project end to end and make those relationships with internal stakeholders. So I think one of the difficulties that I think a lot of agency SEOs will probably attest to is potentially finding it difficult to really get that buy-in from development teams or in-house, maybe PR and communications team once we're wanting to either push forward technical SEO recommendations or link outreach campaigns. So I'm sure that a lot of people on the call will probably have experienced that and potentially be experiencing it now. I certainly have done. I think one of the benefits of having that in-house team, either working as an agency with that team or being part of that in-house team, is the ability to own that sort of stakeholder management side of things. So you can build the right relationships in-house, you know the right questions to ask and the answers that you're expecting to get in terms of getting those recommendations pushed through and ultimately getting SEO, first and foremost in a lot of people's minds. Because I think sometimes if there's an SEO agency and perhaps maybe a broader digital marketing specialist internally, sometimes the SEO recommendations might just not hit home as much as if there is a dedicated in-house SEO team.
I suppose they're not there banging on the table, driving it
potentially,
home. And I suppose also, and I'll go to Shahid next, I think historically SEO agencies have probably had a bad rep, right? I think, and there's a bit of smoke and mirrors, people don't really, well, what am I paying for?
Well, I think it comes down to accountability and measurement. In the end, you don't mind having agencies helping your in-house teams, but it really comes down to transparency and being able to measure what's the ROI that the agency kind of brings to the business. And if it's measurable and you see it maintain or grow over time, it's a no-brainer often to maintain those partners. But if you see over a period of time where partners aren't performing, regardless of what the reason may be, sometimes it's okay to make a change. So maybe continuing on the in-housing topic, for me, in-house gives you the full satellite view of the business. You really understand your data, what the business direction and decisions are, and then you're able to articulate the different teams in a common direction. And kind of what I'm seeing more and more recently is that, I try and advocate that SEO is not really a standalone channel anymore. It's really the backbone and the foundation for all online marketing. SEO plays a big part in content, technical structure and discoverability, and then overall user experience. Your customers coming via SEO are coming with often huge intent. They're not paid for customers. They're coming organically to you. So if you're conveying the right message, provide a good experience, you'll often win in the end. And the agencies really should provide, in my opinion, that peripheral view, help filling in the gaps in terms of data points that you might not see across different customers and clients, or really helping accelerate scalability. So scalability is very, very important, because when you get a strategy that might work for you, the obvious thing is it's immediate from CEO or shareholders. They want to ramp up. So it's immediate, ramp up the activity. And there's always a ceiling with certain types of activities.
Something we've seen in the past as well is certain keywords people might want to appear for or bid on PPC, but it might be too expensive. It was actually, from an SEO point of view, with the right campaign over a period of time, they can increase visibility and be competitive without necessarily having to buy that traffic. So I think you're right. It's about understanding that broader view. And I suppose, Erika, from your side, you obviously provide tools as well as doing your own SEO. What tools do you see different? Have you seen sort of more brands coming along buying sort of agency type packages or looking at it in the same way an agency would look at it? Have you seen the shift in how people are using your tools?
Sure. Yes. So what we've seen, I just want to go back a bit to the previous question, because I want to highlight this. I agree with everything you guys have said. And the only thing I would add is that one thing we tend to underestimate, and I used to as well before I moved in-house, is how important it is to build your own team. So that's a major difference between in-house and an agency, right? You can run exactly how you want it to run, scale it how you want it to scale. You can bring the right skills in, but also you control the motivation, the transparency in how people can develop, and that's very important. So with agencies, I've seen it happening over and over again. Someone leaves or someone comes in and they're not doing a great job, and all of a sudden the client just completely loses trust, right? And it's because they cannot control that process. So of course, everything else we've said and how important, I agree completely with Shahid with what he said. But being able to build your team to fit your goals as a business, this is very integral to making SEO work. So in terms of how we see people using our tools, there are still some differences. So it's not exactly the same way that agencies and companies use them, but then we see so many variations depending on the industry, even the country, or the scale of the business or the agency. I would say probably one thing we're seeing is that when we're talking about in-house teams, they do two things more than agencies do. They tend to track a lot more keywords. They tend to, expand as much as they can what they're looking into and how much they are using the tool to get as much insights as possible. And the other thing is they tend to focus on something at a time. So not necessarily, making full use of what they have in their plan, but you can tell that they're focusing on something right now because yeah, exactly. And then they're moving on to a next project. They're setting up their projects, their reports, and everything to go with that. With agencies, we see some interesting patterns. I would say the ones I find very interesting are what they tend to do a lot of times. So you see small agencies. You can see both ends of the spectrum. Some of them, they just do the strategic work for their clients, but they don't obviously have a lot of budget, so they're not implementing them. So you can see them using Semrush for more strategic and kind of research purposes, not necessarily for tracking or other tools that help them with the implementation part of the strategy. But on the other side, you also see small agencies probably trying to help their clients with everything, right? So making full use of Semrush as much as they can, and like sending reports as much as possible. Larger agencies, they tend to use it, they have different departments. So we see different departments and different people using Semrush, and also for probably different stages of the cycle. So, from pitch to reporting to existing clients. There are way more patterns there, but I think these are the things I find interesting, and how there's also that mixed model that you guys have been talking about, right? So we see big agencies, or on the other side, big corporations sharing the account with their agency or with their clients, and sort of both having access to it and the data. So we see all sorts of patterns, but yeah, it's shifting. It's shifted in the last year that I've been there as well. We see it progressing.